Let's start with the good things about Dragon Ball Super Broly. Naohiro Shintani's character designs. Do you notice that King Vegeta is way less evil in Super Broly? Gone is the cartoonish folk-level villainy that stabs a child to death and leaves it to rot with its father out on the street. Instead, we get a much more mundane evil where he just sends the baby to a planet and his dad follows him. I don't think it actually has anything to say about the mundanity of evil. It's just a version of Broly's origin story that's way over-explained and without any of the poetry of the original. We also get the ruination of Bardock's character. From a genuine-ass pirate to a fucking normal anime dad. Everything about this movie seems to be intent on bastardizing everything about the Z movie, in the direction of making it more palatable and easier to stomach. DBZ has never tried to be literary necessarily, but it has so much untapped potential, and all Super is interested in doing is power-scaling fanfiction. Towards the end of Super Broly's intro, Gine asks Bardock why he's so intent on saving his own son, claiming that it's not like a Saiyan man to care about his kids. This intro is full of Saiyans telling each other things they should already know, like King Vegeta telling Paragus what the Saiyan business model is.
After all, that's what Saiyans have always done. We subjugate valuable worlds and sell them to the highest bidder.
Like what, he needed help with that? He hasn't been here his whole fucking life? Super Broly also has so much of characters just asking each other stupid bullshit.
Bardock, why do you want to save your son? Hey Goku, why do you want to get stronger?
Chilai, why did you join the Frieza Force?
There is no lazier way to convey this kind of information than through a character just asking straight up for the answer, and the other character answering with complete honesty. So anyways, Gine asks Bardock why he wants to save his own son. And he explains, not really to Gine, but to us, the audience. Because we're idiots who need to be explained why a guy would want to save his son from the extinction of his entire species. And you know what the crazy thing is? The explanation isn't even that convincing. Bardock tells us about how he fights and kills so much, and now all of a sudden he had a change of heart. Now he doesn't want his son to die in a genocide of his race. But what was it, Bardock? What was the inciting incident? There is nothing to contemplate here. It really is that simple. In the Dragon Ball Z Bardock special, we never got an explanation of why the guy wanted to save his son. And yet we understood better than we understand in Super why he wanted to save his son. We just understood, because we're not idiots, that even though a guy is a scumbag whom we just saw commit a genocide on an entire race of people, that he still doesn't want his son to die meaninglessly. There's so much more to it, of course, that we can add on our own. The pride, the irony, the spite, the prophecy, the struggle between free will and fate. Z Bardock never had a change of heart. He was a piece of shit garbage genocider who wanted to save his son. Partly because for a person like that, protecting their kids is just another form of self-preservation, and partly because he didn't want Frieza to have his way, the last meager protest of a race subjected to the same fate that it had subjected so many others to, even just minutes earlier. It is a reckoning with his own hypocrisy. I imagine that Bardock would have done the same with just about any other Saiyan kid. If all the Saiyan baby pods were inaccessible and he just found one random pathetic one and sent it off-world with all his hopes and dreams, it would still feel just as moving and in character, because Bardock's goal here isn't just to save his son, it's also one last Hail Mary before the end of his species. A final middle finger to the Overlord who puppeteered him into his fiery death. Now, more than ever, Bardock's original story is moving to me. But it's not just the intro that's the problem, the rest of the Super Broly movie is a problem. In Dragon Ball Z, before his transformation, Broly is a capital C creep. He's so off-putting. It's impossible to tell what he's thinking, if he's thinking anything at all. Try putting this guy on the Z Fighters. His eyes are always half closed as if he's in a trance. Because he is. He is in a trance. His entire character becomes so much more compelling when you realize he was made into a sleepwalking zombie by his father, determined to control his mind, restraining his emotions by force. His father violated him in a scene that, to me, is more graphic than most of the actual fight scenes in the entire show.
Father, what are you doing? Broly!
And that violation doesn't end there. Paragus invaded the one place that should be sacred to even the basest of sinners, the mind. And he set up shop there. Since that night, Broly has been incapable of properly expressing any type of emotion. Paragus has rendered that impossible. Paragus dealt with his problem child via a method that I'm sure a lot of parents out there wish they could use with their problem children. This is the ultimate violation. And there are ramifications, of course. In Super, Broly's just a golden retriever himbo. I'm not kidding, that's all he is. To control him, his dad puts a shock collar around his neck. Still abusive, but not nearly as shocking as this imagery of a man betraying his son's trust and invading his bedroom in an effort to exert eternal control over his emotions and his body. Because in Z, Paragus only sees his son's body as a tool for revenge and conquest.
Now that I can't control you anymore, my dear son Broly, you are nothing to me. You are just a thought in the back of my head. I'm sorry, son, but you'll die with this planet.
We don't even learn that much about Super Paragus before he dies unceremoniously. He doesn't even have a fraction of Z Paragus's whimsy.
You think I want the Earth to look like this? A barren wasteland littered with battle scars and rubble? Of course not. Which is why I decided to create this elaborate ruse. An imaginary town for an imaginary prince. Oh, how you're probably laughing at you right now.
Yeah, that's right. Z Paragus made an entire fake city for Vegeta. Like, literally, there are so many more effective and efficient ways to deal with this Vegeta problem that Paragus has, but he plotted this because he has a sense for the poetic. He's like a Silver Age comic villain. Super Paragus just presses the shock button every time the movie wants us to see Broly cowering like an abused dog. Something easy to empathize with. Something palatable. It's hard to connect with this creep, isn't it? Way easier to just make him into this. Now you feel bad for him, don't you? You want him to be in the Z Fighters now. Yeah, no, I know. He's really cute. He's a cute guy. In Super, Paragus tries to control Broly in an imperfect way as a means of survival, and also as a means of protecting people in some cases. I'm not saying Paragus is a good person, but he literally keeps Broly from murdering a guy who sexually harassed Chilai. That's the purpose of the shock collar. He may have ambitions of revenge, but they don't define him. And as a matter of fact, we see very little of his ambitions. The Super movie goes out of its way to give Paragus as few options as possible. It just doesn't hit the same. When Chilai chastises him for being an abusive father, it feels hollow. Like, yeah, abuse is inexcusable, but this abuse was committed almost as a matter of necessity, practicality. How would you deal with your kid if you were stranded on a planet with no intelligent life, no way of getting off of it, and your kid is constantly at the risk of blowing the whole place up? Yeah, Paragus could have been kinder, but it's hard for me to moralize about his situation. Was there really a way for someone to parent Broly better under the circumstances? I mean, aside from not desperately wanting revenge against the kingdom that left you for dead. On the flip side, no one told Z Paragus to do all this shit. He wiped out an entire galaxy. That had nothing to do with survival. So why did he do it? The guy's a psychopath. He's crazy. You can't let him around children! The main criticism people have of Z Broly generally comes from a misunderstanding that Kakarot making him cry as a baby is what turned him into the legendary Super Saiyan. Wrong. Kakarot making Broly cry as a baby isn't what turns him into the legendary Super Saiyan, it's what makes him break out of his father's hypnosis. It may be a dumb motivation, made even dumber by the fact that Broly even remembers this at all, but I don't think it makes the movie worse. I think it says something. That the thing that breaks Paragus's hold on Broly's mind is a primal memory. Something so insignificant. Broly is finally presented with the opportunity to define himself, to rectify an error in his psyche. That's compelling. In Super, Broly gets a sad flashback with a giant animal he liked playing with, and then when he finally transforms, it's just a guy getting angry. All he does for the rest of the movie is scream and fight the most boring fights in Dragon Ball movie history. Yes, I know that sounds like a terrible opinion, but let me explain. The animation in Super Broly is exceptionally fluid. It is tremendously well animated. You can tell the people who worked on these fight scenes were extremely talented and put a lot of time and effort into them, and it was all a waste. Because the fights are just minutes-long light shows for you to zone out to. It's impossible to focus on any one thing happening in any of these fights. I'll take the least animated fight in Dragon Ball Z over any of this shit. Because at least in those poorly animated fights, I could still pay attention to what was happening. When a fight scene happens in Super Broly, I just start daydreaming about the real movie that this fake movie is based off of. It's the equivalent of a Steve Vai song. When you hear Steve Vai play guitar, you're hearing the most technically accomplished guitarist in the entire world. But all it does is make you go, huh, this guy's pretty good. And then you turn it off and you put on some real music. There is never a point in time where you're gonna feel some profound emotion. You're not gonna hear this and go out and buy a Steve Vai album. I refuse to believe these sales numbers. The stuff is technically proficient and especially impressive if you play guitar yourself, but it's boring. It's a lot of proficiency to say nothing at all. The action in not just Z Broly, but Dragon Ball as a whole is exceptionally memorable. You can remember every single punch that a character ever threw,
And you can replay it in your mind 1,000,000 times, even 20 years later.
That's what I've been doing. My whole life, that's all I've been doing.
This stuff really feels like it hurts. And yeah, you get the requisite fast-paced fucking bullshit, but they're punctuated by legit moments that have you jumping up and down like a fucking monkey. Android 18 versus Vegeta. Android 20 versus Yamcha. Raccoon breaking Gohan's neck. Super as a whole is pretty much devoid of any of those moments. There is no moment where a character's arm gets sliced off or has a hole punched through his shoulder. The only memorable thing about any of these fight scenes, the only way to track the progress at all, is by the transformations. I feel like people think good animation means lots of movement, and that just isn't necessarily the case. Lots of movement can be good, but only if it means something. And yes, I know, animation means movement, but before that, it means life. Some of the best animation in the entire history of the medium is the quiet moments, the still moments that don't need to treat you like an iPad baby to get your attention. And more importantly, your emotion. A big part of that is shot composition and colors, and background art. This is one thing a lot of people take for granted about the DBZ movies. People often obsess over the fact that they're not canon, but that doesn't matter to me. What's canon and what isn't is completely irrelevant. I care about the Z movies because they're good works of art, mostly. So many of them feel so unique because they put our favorite characters in contexts that we rarely see them in, specifically settings that aren't just barren wastelands. Listen, Akira Toriyama was an admittedly lazy writer who famously invented the Super Saiyan transformation because he wanted to stop coloring in Goku's hair. Most of the fights in Dragon Ball Z take place in barren wastelands. This works well for a lot of fights. Thematically, the idea of two combatants laying everything on the table in an open field with nothing left to hide is a very compelling image. It works for Toriyama's fights, except in the occasions like when the androids agree to leave the city and fight on Goku's terms. I don't really remember why they did that. They had the advantage here, but whatever. Sometimes we want to see them fight in an ancient castle, or an Arctic laboratory, the weirdest martial arts tournament stage in history, or Chinatown. These locations give a new sort of context to the action that activates my monkey brain. In the Super Broly movie, we get an ice field. It's not the worst setting. It's kind of new, but it hardly gives our characters anything to interact with. It's still functionally a wasteland, even after it turns into a volcano. In the Z Broly movie, we get an abandoned alien city, which means architecture, which means Dragon Ball Z finally becomes what it was always destined to be. A kaiju movie. There is nothing more cathartic than seeing a gigantic monster make a complete mockery out of man-made structures, deleting in a single second constructions that took us ages to build. Here, the constructions were made by a bunch of alien slaves, but the cathartic feeling is still there. Though these characters may be more or less human-sized, they are titans, and their powers are titanic. And it really takes buildings being treated like paper mache to evoke that feeling of dealing with a primordial force of nature. You sort of lose that feeling a little bit when the primordial forces of nature are fighting out in nature. But Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan isn't just a kaiju movie. It's also a 2003 episode of SmackDown.
Oh my god, a killer lariat from Broly!
He just turned him into part of the scenery. Oh, Gohan's about to get away.
Where's he going, SD?
Oh my goodness gracious!
Where's he going, SD?
I really wish you wouldn't take so much pleasure in this. Surely a tag team of Goku and Trunks will be able to
do nothing! A double lariat! Have you ever seen anything like it, SD?
Oh, he just knocked the Super Saiyan out of you.
He's showing him what a Super Saiyan means, SD!
Dear God in heaven, have mercy.
There is no mercy, SD! He's enjoying this! Look at the smile on his face!
Trunks still taking the brunt of the attack, and oh, we just finished spending $2 billion on that bridge.
Looks like Piccolo's gearing up for an attack. No good!
Oh, the leg sweep. That is a fantastic move. Credit where credit's due, that is an expert maneuver.
Good God, another one? Another double lariat! Can we get a replay? Can we get a thank you? Thank you!
I just cannot for the life of me understand why you take so much joy in watching these stand-up young men get obliterated by that villain.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, SD. It's because he's the greatest damn fighter to set foot on this planet. Now pay attention. Here's where it happens. No!
Oh, no.
He turned them into Thanksgiving dinner, SD.
Gary, that is a massive indictment of your wife's cooking. Oh, this move is dangerous, Gary.
He can't let him charge it up.
We've seen this before. It never ends well for the one on the other end.
Broly's taking his time. He can't be doing this on purpose.
I don't think he realizes.
Oh, point blank. And not a mark on him, SD. He's clean as baby Jesus on Christmas Day.
Ladies and gentlemen, this does not bode well for Goku. Whoa, is he gonna take it out on the crowd?
Curveball, SD.
Oh no. Oh no. See, I think that's just too much. And it's not just the moves. If you watch the Funimation English dub, then it's the songs too. All the songs in this movie either fit perfectly or juxtapose the scene completely. Like in the beginning when Goku and Chi-Chi are waiting in line to be interviewed for a school that Gohan wants to get into, and we get this post-hardcore emo song playing over it. I don't know what genre this is, but it sounds like something off a rival school's album. And it rocks! That fucking rocks! I love that this is playing under a scene that's supposed to be lighthearted and funny. That's amazing. A lot of people hate the way the English dub of Dragon Ball Z puts so many dark and self-serious songs in the movies. They claim that it just doesn't fit, but I disagree. I think the disparity between Toriyama's bubbly art style and the angular music make for an unparalleled experience. And if you don't like it, you can still watch the Japanese dub with Kikuchi's score on it. You still get an unimpeachable classic. Unlike the Super Broly movie, whose soundtrack does nothing for me. The Go Broly Go song felt like something I'd hear in a Broly-themed toothpaste advertisement. I even prefer the Faulconer score, which we should really be calling the Mike Smith score. But I don't want to get too deep into that right now. If you hear this song when Broly punts Piccolo like a football and you feel nothing, brother, turn off the Dragon Ball and put on ECW. Watch some Rob Van Dam versus Jerry Lynn. There's also a Pantera song in here about heroin addiction. It fits very well during the scene where Broly's body finally unravels. Like, yeah, heroin addiction is a lot heavier than this children's cartoon about space monkeys fighting. But in the space between that disconnect, there is truth. The pain that renowned racist Phil Anselmo feels on this track mirrors the pain that Broly feels as he is forced to become an invincible, unfeeling monster. The last and only option left for him. Violation and abuse did not make this Broly into a hecking good pupperino. It turned him into a true freak. In Super, when this golden retriever himbo finally fights our heroes, it's just your standard blind rage. And when Frieza kills Paragus and he finally transforms, it's still your standard blind rage. He doesn't change as a character. There's nothing interesting about the way he fights before or after the transformation. There's nothing he has to say, just mindless screaming. This Broly doesn't even feel that dangerous. They're taking turns on this guy like he's just another villain. All his life's pain, his suffering, transforms him into a pretty strong guy who prompts our heroes to show the audience a new character design to defeat him, just like the last 17 guys. In Z Broly, when this lanky creep finally grows impossible to control, his body unravels. We literally see imagery of his skin unable to contain his violence. His screams don't sound like anger, they sound like pain. Even in the Japanese dub, he doesn't even scream. He just gurgles and fades away. This is what was hiding there all along. The last fruit of Saiyan culture. All their guilt made manifest. Let's be clear. This guy isn't just final boss strong. He's a mathematical error. He's taking on all of the strongest characters at the same time. With ease, mind you. He is dismantling them, eviscerating them. And more than that, he's enjoying himself. This guy is a sadist. He's a psychopath. There has never been a character in Dragon Ball history that has done what this guy is doing right now. He is a genuine threat. Of course they didn't try to save him. They couldn't risk it. This is the punishment the Saiyans earned with their ages of violence. All the time praying for a legendary Super Saiyan as they razed civilizations to the ground and murdered even their own people. You asked for a Super Saiyan? Here he is. A real one. Not like those fake Super Saiyans we've learned to content ourselves with. Where'd we get these guys? Dollar General? Remember how in Super, Frieza killed Broly's dad? In Z, Broly takes matters into his own hands. And not with a bitch-ass ki blast either. He murders his own father with his bare hands. He crushes his father to death in his spacecraft and fucking Rothless burgers him into the sun. Who's doing it like him? Who's doing it like him? When Vegeta feels the sheer magnitude of Broly's power, he falls to his knees. The prince falls to his knees. As a matter of instinct, he bows down to his superior. He cannot even bring himself to fight, let alone fight him one-on-one and take his time with the transformations like he does in Super. Can you imagine any of the Z fighters standing by and letting Z Broly finish them off one by one like it's some kind of fucking video game? They instantly and instinctively agreed to take him on together. His power transcended their fighter's pride. That's aura! That's hype moments! I don't know how to end the video. Stories should be more than just lore delivery machines. Every film is about hype moments and aura. They just go about it in different ways. Now, I'm not saying that Dragon Ball Z Broly - the legendary Super Saiyan 2003 is as good as a Jean-Luc Godard movie. But why can't I say that? I mean, maybe my brain is so fundamentally broken by 20 straight years of cartoon watching, but the Z Broly movie activated my brain and my emotions in a way that so much high art does. We should expect more from art. The pinnacle of animation can't just be how expensive does this seizure trigger look. And while these movies may not be high art necessarily, even low art can be worth its weight in gold when seen by the right eyes. This is where the Patreon thank you goes, so thank you to my one patron.